What's up, fam? Welcome to, well, I should say that the cardinal outside the window and I would like to welcome you to part 10 of Being in the Way. This one is called You Become What You Behold. Here is Jesus, Matthew 6. He says, Don't stir up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin don't destroy, and where thieves don't break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So, growing up in the Baptist church, I often heard these kind of sort of like pastoral, humble flexes about about hell and money. Like the line kind of went something like, a lot of preachers are afraid to talk about Jesus, two of Jesus' favorite, most repeated subjects, hell and money. But not us. We're going to go right at it. I'm not sure how accurate that perspective is, given the fact that the vast majority of folks who've been willing to be honest with me about their true opinions of the American church did not share the perspective that the thing's okay and helpful enough. It's just doesn't. The focus is there's not enough talk about hell and money. Like we got to talk about more. The thing I hear more often is just that it seems like every second or third sermon or announcement cycle seems to toggle back into the whole tithes and offerings and pledge drives and giving campaigns. But anyway, that's a bit of a diversion. We're talking about where your treasure is, there your heart is also. And I just want to say from the jump here, I'm not entirely convinced that this is like a financial lesson. It doesn't seem to me to be about finances. It seems to be about another resource that we have. You know what it is? It's your attention. Because he says, where your treasure is, there your heart will also be. And the main idea is just that whatever we treasure captures our attention. And whatever captures our attention shapes our imagination. And our imagination quietly forms who it is that we are and who it is that we're becoming. And this isn't like abstract theology. It's actually an accurate naming of human psychology. I've heard it said like this: we become what we behold. Psychologists have actually been studying this phenomenon for decades. It's called the chameleon effect, or unconscious mimicry. It's pretty well documented that we can borrow from one another, often without realizing it. We begin using the same phrases as our friends. We adopt their posture, their laugh, their pace of speech. My brother-in-law, Jason, has one of the most magnificent cackles of a laugh. Just this joyous, infectious, it's wild. And I remember he lived with us for a little while. With me and Jess and Jason all lived together right when he got out of college. And I remember one day just sitting in a group of friends in our shared house, and I was laughing so hard, but I noticed that the sound of Jason's laugh was coming out of I had somehow adopted his laugh, and I think it still comes out. I also remember in my college years, there was a girl that we knew in Kona, Hawaii, where I was going to school. And she went off to London for a year and fell in love over there. And when she came back, she just had this pronounced, thick, like Cockney British accent. And she was from like Omaha or something. So we were all like, should somebody ask about this? But this is it's unconscious mimicry, or the chameleon effect. My mom warned me all the time in middle school, Bobby, you got to be careful who you hang around with. It's going to direct, like, who was it? What's that line? Show me a man's friends and I'll tell you of the man. But I assured my mom on the regular that I was doing just fine, okay? And now, in hindsight, looking back as a 44-year-old, I realize, as I have often, that she was right. Of course she was right. Like, the people that we spend our time around the most shapes who it is that we feel we are, captures our imagination, and directs the course of our life, oftentimes without us even noticing. Here's another favorite study of mine. I came across this a few years ago to my great delight. Apparently, research has demonstrated that couples who have been together in committed relationship for 25 years or more begin to physically resemble one another. Because sharing a life changes us. You know, when we laugh together and we grieve together and we make babies, we bring new life into the world, and we roll our eyes at the same jokes and suffer alongside each other for long enough, our lives start telling the same story, like right there in the shape of our face. Isn't that beautiful? The face of the beloved slowly becomes visible as the face of the lover. It sounds like something Rumi would write, not Robert Franzen, the psychologist from Nebraska. So St. Paul again, he said, "We all, with unveiled faces, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image." With unveiled faces, when we drop the mask and direct our attention on this one thing, we are transformed into what we are beholding. And this suggests that transformation isn't a matter of trying harder, hallelujah. Transformation might be a matter of looking longer. The French mystic Simone Weil wrote, "Attention is the rarest and the purest form of generosity." And something about this statement feels particularly prescient given the world today, where attention has become the most valuable commodity there is. Like, the biggest companies on earth aren't primarily competing for our money anymore. They're competing for our attention. News organizations, streaming services, social media, politicians, and the actual god of modern times, advertising. Everybody's asking the same questions that our kids were asking when they were toddlers, which is, how do I keep them looking at me? How do I keep them looking at me? Whatever captures our attention shapes our imagination, and our imagination directs our life. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So when we do the work to discover what consistently receives our attention, we get a clear picture of who it is we're becoming. And I want to pause there and say it again. When we do the work to discover what consistently receives our attention, it takes effort to notice where our attention is going. It's a choice, it's a practice. It's the spiritual discipline that I would say I've been most committed to over the last decade. I'd like to call it spying on myself. Just checking in from time to time with as much regularity as possible, just where it is that my mind is taking me. So when we do the work to discover what consistently receives our attention, we get a clear picture of who it is that we're becoming. This is Simone Weil again. She says, "Absolutely unmixed attention is prayer." This is not what I heard growing up. The idea, the practice that unmixed attention is prayer, that's actually what prayer is focused attention. Prayer is like just learning to pay attention, to be present, to notice, and then to keep returning our gaze again and again to the one who's never stopped looking at us, looking through us, looking with us. So one of my favorite stories, this guy Thomas Keating was a Catholic monk who did a lot of interfaith work, and he was a pioneer of what's called like centering prayer, which is just 20 minutes of silence. And he used to go around to different monasteries, Catholic parishes, teaching centering prayer. And at one of these little conferences that he was giving, a nun came up to him at the break, and they had just completed 20 minutes of silence. And this is like day 3 of the conference. The nun comes up to Father Keating and says, "I don't think this meditation stuff is for me." And he goes, "Well, why is that?" And she said, "Well, how long was that session we just had? How long was that silence?" And he said, "It was 20 minutes. And she said, "Well, in 20 minutes, I must have had 10,000 thoughts that took me in 10,000 opposite directions." And Mr. Keating paused for a moment, and then he said, "Wow, what a gift. 10,000 opportunities to come back home." And when we can make that switch from punishing ourselves for not being where it is that we think we ought to be, or not doing the thing we think we ought to be doing correctly, when we can make the switch from punishing ourselves to noticing that we've become distracted. The place that we're noticing from is the place where we're trying to go. St. Francis said, what you're looking for is where you're looking from. And that's why God can be so hard to find. The goal, if there's a goal of contemplative prayer, then it is, at least as I understand it, simply training our attention to rest in divine love. The goal of the spiritual life is to reparent ourselves, to train our attention to rest in the presence of God, who's resting in us eternally, to bring our gaze home and home and home and home again and again, because we become what we behold. Jesus tells this tiny parable about a dude who stumbled upon a great treasure rather unexpectedly. You know, it doesn't say he was a treasure hunter who finally found this great prize. There's another story like that. This one's like the bumbler's guide to salvation, because he's just, as far as we could tell, he's just meandering through a field when he suddenly trips over a treasure. So I've been waiting for this to happen. But he discovers this treasure, and then he doesn't go tell it on the mountain. Instead, he wisely keeps it hid. And then with joy, he gets rid of everything that wasn't it. He sells it all, and he purchases the field in order to become, like, truly wealthy. And it's a picture of finally finding something that's worth giving everything else away for. Jonathan Edwards called it the expulsive power of a new affection. Because if it's real, then it rearranges everything. Our loves, our attention, the scope of our world. Everything begins to kind of finally slot into its proper place, and not through our great effort or buying the spiritual IKEA shelves or whatever. It's just through attention. Okay, I challenge you to find a more wonderfully succinct poem than this one. This is Mary Oliver. She says, "Instructions for living a life. Pay attention. Be astonished. Tell about it. Pay attention, because what you attend to, you'll eventually treasure. And what you treasure, you'll slowly become." So, here's our homework assignment. You know, I'm a school teacher now also. To simply notice where our attention goes when nobody is telling it where to go. Where does it wander to? Just notice. Notice what fascinates you. Notice what occupies the quiet moments. Notice your aversions. Figure out what repulses you. Not to correct it or fix it, but just to see. My spiritual director introduced me to a practice and she called it a spiritual GPS. It's an easy little check-in, and it has 4 parts. It just goes like this. The first is this: what have I been thinking about lately? What are the loops and the patterns? Where does my mind return to? What am I thinking about? The second one is, how have I been feeling? Like, what has been the prevailing emotional experience for me in the last couple of weeks? Just notice and see what that is. The third is about desire. What is it that I feel I'm longing for at the moment? Is there one thing? Are there many things? What do I want? I told you there were 4 steps, and the 4th step is this: to consider those 3 aspects of our being from a neutral, non-judging place. I heard somebody say like there is nothing in all of creation that can withstand the loving gaze of God. So the invitation is just to look long and deep at ourselves and our impulses, our patterns and our loops and our longings and our wounds and our griefs and our ideas and all the constellation of phenomena that go into making me feel like a Bobby. Just to pay attention to see what those things are. Because we can't let go of anything that we're not aware that we're holding. So the first step is we got to figure out what it is that we're holding so we can let go. So that we can have in some instances, maybe for the very first time in our life, actual free will, the choice to direct our attention in ways that are actually helpful, healing. You know, Jess and I have been married for, it'll be 21 years this year. Do you think we look alike? I'll put some pictures up. I'm going to do a little bit of research into this 25 years of marriage thing. I know for a fact that our old bookkeeper, Nanette Van Doren, and her husband Rick, they definitely check this box. If I can get her permission, I'll put a picture up. If you've got one, please send it in. You've been married for 25 years? Why don't you submit? Can you put photos in the comments section of the YouTube video? This is how good of a YouTuber I am. If you can put photos, if you've been married for 25 years or more together, and you can put a photo in the comments section, please do, and let us evaluate the legitimacy of my claims today. All right, that's probably good for now. Love y'all. Thanks for being here. And we'll see you next week, which is going to be, hold on, stand by, is going to be July the 19th at the Ribault Garden Club on 2nd Avenue North. We will be all together now for part 11 of this series. But for now, thanks for being here. Pay attention to your attention paying. And I'll see you soon. Peace.